This video is sponsored by War Thunder. Hi guys, this might be one of the biggest hacks we've ever seen in gaming. And it's absolutely wild because all players affected by the hack were given $13 million of in-game currency. And then people were getting their accounts banned left, right, and center, and it was absolute chaos. It got so bad that content creators for the game started to feel like this might be the end. And there were tons of accounts reporting on this saying that there were 900 gigabytes of data stolen, and if Ubisoft doesn't pay a ransom, all upcoming Ubisoft titles and remakes currently in development will be leaked. So this story is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. What the hell is actually going on here? Is it true that all of this in-game currency was given to players? Is it true that there's a second hacker group, and then also a third hacker group, and finally a fourth hacker group? Like, what should we believe here? Well, I've put on the suspenders to get to the bottom of this. So to paint the full picture here, I think that we can all agree Ubisoft has been under fire in recent years. And earlier this year, they had this to say about hackers in Rainbow Six Siege.
I'm not usually the guy who gets to talk about cheaters.
Okay.
Because seriously, f*** 'em.
Yeah, and obviously the crowd at the time ate it up. So how do we go from there to messages like this being posted in the in-game bans channel for Rainbow Six Siege? Well, we've got a few things that we need to sort of track down. First, we need to look at the breach of Siege's servers themselves. But then we also need to look into this MongoDB thing. Like, what's the deal with MongoDB and the hack surrounding that? So let's actually start there. But before we begin, here's a quick word from today's sponsor, War Thunder. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, and it's available now on PC, consoles, and mobile for free. The game has over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships for you to command, ranging from biplanes and armored cars from the past to the fighter jets and main battle tanks of today. And you use those vehicles in the game's intense combat system, and all of them are modeled down to their individual components, so that's their engines, their fuel tanks, their weapons, and their crew, and all of those are susceptible to damage or disabling from enemy fire. On top of that, it's super optimized to make sure it runs smoothly and lag-free even on low-end machines, or if you're playing on mobile, they also have a new mobile version which runs really smoothly as well. I personally recommend it because it's just got such an enormous player base. They have over 95 million players, which is a crazy large community to be jumping into. So to join them, you can play for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile by using my links in the pinned comment or the video description. And if you're a new player or you're a returning player on PC and consoles and you haven't played in the last 6 months, you'll get a bonus pack across all platforms that includes a ton of goodies and 7 days of premium account as well. And that's available for a limited time only, so be quick, click my link, and get started. I first saw this posted about by Florian here, who's also linked to some other sources we'll take a look at in just a second. But mongobleed, as it's being called, is basically a security vulnerability for this service called MongoDB, which is for databases. Kevin Beaumont has a good write-up here from a couple of days ago where he says that somebody from Elastic Security decided to post the exploit on Christmas Day. So you can imagine, for example, all the Ubisoft devs are at home celebrating Christmas with their families, and so is everybody else that uses MongoDB. Like, this is a rough day to post an exploit, and what it did is it allowed memory read without authentication. Now, to go into this in a tiny bit more detail, if we look at Eric's post here, Eric Capuano, he's got a slightly more extensive write-up, which I think is really useful to understand what the hell's going on here. MongoBleed exploits a flaw in how MongoDB handles zlib compressed network messages. For the purpose of this video, we don't need to really go into what that means, but thankfully Eric's little summary here is going to suffice. When compression is enabled, which it often is for performance, an attacker can craft connections that cause the server to leak chunks of its memory in responses. And the leaked chunks of memory could be very precious data that you would not want getting into the public's hands. But this attack, which also affects all these different instances of MongoDB, all these different versions, but the attack is is completable if you have a public endpoint open on your MongoDB server, and you do these tens of thousands of connections to the server, and you cause it to sort of spill out this data to you, and then you can reconstruct sensitive information. So that sounds really bad, right? And so various people in the sort of security community were talking about how bad it was, but this then started to blow up not just in the security community, but also in the Siege community, because Siege was having problems of its own. On the night of December 26th and crossing over into the early hours of December 27th, people were posting on the Rainbow Six subreddit saying that they were getting banned for harassment for no reason, and they were then immediately getting unbanned, so something clearly was going wrong with their ban system. And folks like Kudos reported on this saying, it's probably just a small bug or something, but it's no big deal. But then by the time Kudos woke up, he was like, this seems like it's going to be a lot more of a system compromise than just the ban system. Like, something bigger is afoot. You had folks like Lavezzi here state that Siege source code had then allegedly leaked via the mongobleed pivot, and he said 90s to present SDKs, networking, and BattlEye would be included in that. Cheaters now have the blueprint. Expect aimbots, ESP, God mode, anti-cheat bypasses to explode. More cheaters incoming, ranked ruined, servers down, infinite credits glitch, mass bans, why still MongoDB? Games need its speed or flex for 40 million players, messy data. Switching is a nightmare though. You have to rewrite millions of code lines, migrate petabytes without downtime. It's a $10 million+ job. So Lavezzi posted this, and some other posts were sort of starting to blow up at a similar time as well, such as this from Tazon here. And this is translated from Spanish, but Tazon said, at the moment it's claimed Ubisoft has been hacked by 4 different groups. So we went from the game having issues with its ban system to the MongoDB problem that Lavezzi was talking about, to Tazon saying, actually, there's a much broader story happening here. And the detail on this is that supposedly they got all the source code of all Ubi products from the 1990s to today, and that was over 900 gigabytes of data. So if this is true, this is obviously massive news for Ubisoft, for Ubisoft shareholders, for all the players of not just Siege, but all the other Ubi games, and also the security community seeing that MongoBleed has had one of its first main major casualties in a massive corporation like Ubisoft. So then you had accounts like VX Underground starting to pay attention to this. I mean, as far as I can tell, VX Underground is sort of very focused on malware, and they're just sort of like entrenched in the malware and cybersecurity community. And their tweet broke it down in a bit more detail, and they said that the first group gifted all this in-game currency to players, but Ubisoft would perform a rollback to undo the damage. But the detail on how exactly this first hack happened was still unclear. Then the second group, unrelated to the first group, they exploited the MongoDB instance from Ubi using MongoBleed, which let them in some way pivot an internal Git repository. They exfiltrated a large portion of Ubisoft's internal source code and assert its data from the 90s to present, including software development kits, multiplayer services, etc. I have medium to high confidence this is true, and have confirmed with multiple parties, they say. They then go on to say, a third group of individuals claim to have compromised Ubi and exfiltrated user data by exploiting MongoBleed. And this group is the one that's trying to extort Ubisoft. And the name of the group is Arctic Siege or something, and they're active on Telegram. And then the fourth group say that the second group are lying, and the second group has had access to the Ubi internal source code for a while. So that second group was the one that said that they have data from the 90s, right? So apparently they were trying to hide behind the first group to masquerade as them and give them a reason to leak the source code in totality and sort of use group 1 as a scapegoat. And the fourth group finds this annoying, and so does the first group, who are being blamed for this other leak. So this is ridiculous. This is like something out of a film at this point. Like the multiple hacker groups all getting angry about how the other hackers are behaving. And if we dive into, for example, the group on Telegram, right? They're active on Telegram. People found this and they posted about it on the Rainbow Six subreddit. And these are some of the screenshots saying, Ubi's reverted all internal save files to a state from approximately 2 hours before employees went on break following a recent hack. So presumably all of the issues with people being gifted currency, etc., would all be rolled back to that point. They say the Team Arctic are happy to help the Siege community. Yeah, right. And then they said things like this. Element 5 allowed us to gain access to Ubi servers. Watch what you download. Matthias Carlson had links with Tencent, allowing a further connection. Aharis is a Ubi game developer, which allowed us to access future plans related to Siege. Mail Court, a Ubi project management employee who had a hold of, let's say, a bit too much files. And then Memento Gallery, the man himself, the social media manager, which had a remote access tool connected to his device. Malwarebytes is free, lol. Love y'all, more info soon. Now, the problem is, this is where the whole house of cards started to fall down a little bit. Because first of all, Aharis here is actually inside the Reddit thread. If we scroll down, this user says, I'm Aharis on Telegram, but I don't work at Ubisoft at all. So it seems like they just chose a random name, maybe, to tag for this. Like they're not a Ubi developer. Similarly, there's devs mentioned here that don't even work on Siege or work at Ubisoft anymore. So it just feels like there's something up with this Telegram. And this is where folks like Cran started jumping in and saying, just to clear up some confusion, the bans and the credits and all of the stuff that's happening with the first group of hackers, that is unrelated to any data leakage. So just like, first of all, that's Cran's first assertion. The only access game code is from the 90s, seemingly, where newer games do not seem to be affected. More recent miscellaneous code might have been accessed, and there's no evidence of user data being obtained. Cran goes on to say, the Telegram group Arctic R6 Siege that we were looking at a second ago are claiming to have access they do not have, and they're trying to make a quick buck off of people. Their evidence looks compelling at first, but under further scrutiny has a number of glaring issues. The claims of how the hack worked do not line up with evidence in the game's public API, do not fall for this. And there's random emails and username and password hashes and things like that. But Cran says this looks like the same fake evidence that was posted in the Arctic channel. In other words, he's calling the Telegram group completely bogus. So if that's the case, what it sounds like Cran is saying is the first group, absolutely, it's irrefutable. They've done that damage to Siege. The second group may have data, but it may be less widespread than the claim is being made here, where it's not 90s to present, but it's actually a little bit more narrow. Then the third group doesn't exist. They're just basically kids trolling on Telegram for fun. And then this fourth group is still just a mysterious group of people that are just annoyed about group 2. And there's some further digging that is sort of needed here, I think. So Levy says, what are the odds of a massive data leak happening after today? Because, again, irrefutably, the game was compromised in a massive way. Cran says 0, actually. Anyone saying otherwise is fear-mongering, because players' sensitive information, like that info, is not exposed through the services accessed in the hack. And with regard to the more recent miscellaneous code that might have been accessed, beyond just the stuff from the 90s, Cran says, yeah, it's probably console SDKs and middleware. Heard that there's possibly some back-end infrastructure source code, but no confirmation. So again, just reiterating that it seems to be slightly more contained than Group 2 are making out when they're saying that they've got 900 gigabytes of like current game source code and modern data. And Cran is really doubling down on this, saying not even close to being everything since the 90s. Now, what's interesting is once things like this started getting noticed, and once things like Cran's pushback started getting noticed, the Telegram channel fell apart. They said, I can't lie, I was capping, gang. And the channel ended up getting deleted. So that third group got fully wiped out. They are out of the picture now. And then folks like Tazon have said, actually, Ubisoft sources have now confirmed that 900 gigabytes of information wasn't extracted. That was actually from a hack from a few years ago. But again, this is using the Arctic R6 Siege Telegram as a source. And that source is bogus. So this whole post is just based on bogacity. And so you have the sort of tail of everyone's kind of view of what's happening here transforming even more, with VX Underground now posting saying the first group is laying low after giving everyone all the in-game currency. The second group has been having some conflicts with people on the internet. Initially, it seemed like they compromised an internal Git repository, but the word is now that that was a lie. The third group is lying, as we've confirmed, as we've said. And then the fourth group is sort of laying low, but still asserting that group 2 is a bunch of jerks. Not only that, but there are now a bunch of imposter group 2s on the internet lying, trying to impersonate extortionists for some reason. And so VX starts asking some of the important questions here, which is, number one, are group 1 going to explain what they did and how they did it? Like, we've seen so much pandemonium in the game here. We still don't know if that pandemonium was actually related to MongoDB or not. Like, it could have been a completely separate thing. We also don't know why they did it. Normally, a group like this, if it's Lizard Squad or something, they're going to come along and say, we're doing this for this reason. We have an opinion about stuff that we want you to hear, and we're going to interact with people in some capacity, but this just seems to have randomly happened without anyone taking super clear ownership, seemingly at least. And similarly, this whole group 2 that seemingly have 900 gigs of data, and then apparently they don't have 900 gigs of data, like, what's the deal? Are we just LARPing? Are we pretending that we've got some kind of leaked source code and we actually don't? Like, why are we making these things up right now? What possibly is compelling us to do that? One thing's for certain, and that's the Siege have commented on Group 1's hack, right? And they've said, no one's going to be banned for spending any credits they received. We're going to be rolling it all back. The bans thing is something that they're working on. There was a Shield Guard ban wave, but that was unrelated. And they're working hard to resolve it and make sure that players can play again. And so amongst all of this confusion, I think one way to get a pretty good idea of whether or not this is going to be a really mega big deal long term, as cynical as this is to look at the Ubisoft share price. And it hasn't completely cratered. Like, over the last couple of days, and this is obviously over the Christmas period, it's just sort of pootling along. It's fine. And if, as asserted by Zephyrus here, all upcoming Ubisoft titles and remakes will be leaked if Ubisoft don't pay a ransom, if that was actually something that the market thought had any kind of likelihood or potential for happening, we'd be seeing, I think, some very different numbers here. If you ask me, I think the moral of this story is that misinformation can spread so fast, so easily, especially when everyone's kind of relying on just hearsay on Twitter or Telegram to understand what's going on. And while you may well have heard that Siege has been compromised, and I mean, from videos like this, that is absolutely apparent. It's very clear that it has been. I don't think that this is going to kill Ubisoft. I don't think that this is going to meaningfully affect other Ubisoft titles right now. I could be mistaken, and it could be the Group 2 does have some pertinent information that's up-to-date modern info that they're going to leak at some point, and that's going to cause a massive splash in Ubisoft's development plans. But as things stand, I think that this story has already weirdly kind of come to a close. Yes, the game was breached, but yes, the breach is already being rolled back, and all the other hackermans that seem to be trying to get involved here, as far as I'm concerned, are LARPing until proven otherwise. So what do you think of all this? It's a bit of a weird story, especially over Christmas Day. I really feel for the Ubisoft devs who have been pulled back into the office to have to deal with all of this stuff. Like, they would have been celebrating with their families for the Christmas period and would suddenly have had to be in the absolute trenches trying to fix all this stuff. So hopefully it's not been too stressful for them. I think that that's just a pretty generic humanitarian viewpoint of the whole thing. But at the same time, I'm intrigued to see how this story unfolds, and I'm curious to hear whether you think Siege kind of had it coming by taunting those cheaters and the hackers earlier this year, or if you think that this is just a case of people overly hating on Ubisoft because they're an easy target, maybe. Let me know in the comments down below, and also be sure to let me know if you want to see more videos like this one in the future from me, because this is a little bit of a departure from my normal content style, but I thought it was quite a fun story to investigate And so that's why we've dived into all this detail here. Also, again, thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring this video, and you can play it for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile by using my links in the pinned comment or the video description. New and returning players that haven't played in 6 months will get a free bonus pack full of different goodies, premium vehicles, all that kind of stuff, and for a limited time only, you'll also get some free premium. So make sure you don't miss it. Click my link now.